Obviously, planning for retirement in your 30s is very different from planning for it in your 60s. But how is it different? And what should your focus be on in each decade? All right, so let's just start. I'm not even going to get to your 20s because your 20s, you're just getting started in life, but I will apply this also to your 30s. 30s, you need to know your goal and start saving away, right? Just really understand what your goal is. So I ask people all the time, what's your cash flow goal? How much money do you want in income in retirement? And I'll get various answers, and especially when I was in my 20s, I used to think if I had $5,000 a month coming in, I would be living life, right? Now that was 20 years ago. That's definitely not the case today, but at least I had a goal. I was starting somewhere. So know your goal and start saving. That's really your focus. Don't worry about trying to get really fancy with investing until you have at least 50,000, 100,000 or more in savings. But especially when you're in your 30s, you're starting to establish a family, you should have your emergency fund already in place, you should be tracking your money, you should have a good grip on your finances and just work on saving whatever you can. Now you might say, where do I save it? That's a great question. You can definitely save it in different places. You could just put it in a simple savings account. I'm not recommending you go put it into mutual funds because you could also lose it when you're saving it as well. But there are things, the strategies like infinite banking that we talk about on this channel quite a bit. You know, in infinite banking, you can actually save it up. It's guaranteed not to lose money, but you also have the ability to invest and make money with it as well. In fact, if you understand how to use it right, you can actually get your money to pay you twice. You can make money in two places at the same time. And when you're in your 30s, it's like the optimal time to be able to get those kind of policies that give you the best rate of return possible with the lowest cost, best return, allowing you to make more money with your money. So great way to save, especially if you haven't got quite to at least $100,000 plus. And even if you have, might still be a great place to start storing your money to accelerate and get you to your goals faster. All right, now what if you're in your 40s? Hey guys, welcome. That's me too. I'm 45 right now. You know, in your 40s, it's similar to the 30s, but you really are kind of keeping it going, right? In 40s, as I've learned, especially where I have literally, we have a blended family of 8 kids, and 6 of our 8 are 12 years to 18 years old. It can get expensive. Right? I understand, I get it. Some of you are even wondering about saving for college and things like that, and then you're wondering, can I even save enough for college? Here's the big thing I'm gonna recommend for you in my age group, in your 40s, is keep your expenses in check, right? It's very easy because usually this is your most productive time in life. 40s and 50s are usually great. You're making a lot of money, you've got some of that energy. You might be, depending on what you're doing in your 40s, you might be winding down, depending on how hard your work is. But for the most part, you're really at that kind of optimal peak performance time that you're saying, now I've got some traction, now I've got some income, and this is the best time to make sure you keep your expenses in check. Make sure you're really tracking your money. I recommend tools like Mint, for example, to use that to check. You can even just use a spreadsheet, anything, to just watch what's going on with your money. Watch the expenses, watch how much income's coming in, and then keep saving away, right? Just keep putting that money. And like I said, you can even use infinite banking. Even in our 40s, you're definitely not even close to being too old to use that kind of strategy if you want to keep building your savings and be able to use it to invest as well versus locking up in your 401k. By the way, key thing about your 401k, because we're moving into this period, right? And maybe even your 30s, you're wondering about this. 401ks, I generally don't recommend. And here's why. Because if you knew your goal and you said your goal is, like mine was at the time, mine was $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year 20 years ago, I knew that if I wanted to have that kind of income in those days' dollars, before all the inflation, right? I would have to save up to $2 million in my retirement accounts if I'm using traditional retirement accounts. $2 million. That was pretty depressing. Now see, when I was a financial advisor in my 20s, I was telling people, hey, well, just keep saving and going. Well, when I put in real stock market returns in those retirement accounts, like I would put in, instead of putting in 10 or 12% like I used to do early in my career, later I got wiser and realized that the real rate of return of the stock market's closer to about 7 to 8%. I started putting in 8% because even 7% was more depressing. So I put in the higher number, which many times over a long-term period, the S&P 500 is not getting that. Right now it's 7.75% approximately, depending on the day when you're watching this. So it's still less than 8%, and most people don't even get that kind of return in their mutual funds. So what happens? You end up making maybe 6 or 7%. Even if you have a 401k and you get a match, it might add maybe a couple of percent a year, and that's it. It's really not enough to move the needle to really make it work. In fact, here's what I've learned. If you want to live on X amount of dollars in today's dollars, but factor for inflation, you gotta save that much money per year. So if I was in my situation, if I would go back to my 20s and I said, I wanna live on $60,000 a year lifestyle, guess what? I would have to start saving $60,000 a year when you're factoring for inflation and for the actual return of the stock market. And that's even if you get a 401k match. Not exciting. By the way, 401ks won't even let you put that much money in, will they? You're gonna be maxing out about $20,000 a year, get a little match, and then you're done. You're wondering what to do next. That's the problem, okay? That's why I'm talking about this infinite banking as a potential, because guess what? There is no limit to it. You can save up to 25% of your gross income into that plan. So if you make $100,000 a year, you could save $25,000 a year. You make $200,000 a year, you can save $50,000 a year. None of these dumb rules that say you can't put in too much, which just keeps you broke later on in retirement. So that's why I keep bringing that up. So if you're in your 40s, make sure you keep your expenses in check even while you're trying to deal with everything else, and keep building that savings. Now, this could be a good time to also start investing, but we'll get to that here when I talk about your 50s, because the truth is you can be doing this all throughout. In your 50s, when you're looking at your money, just don't gamble with it. Don't do what many financial advisors do, like the guy that taught in our church one time. He was telling someone who was in their 70s, he said, hey, if you're not 80 plus years old, you should be putting all 100% of your money in the stock market. I think if you're in your 50s and even in your 60s and later, right, you should not be putting all your money in the stock market, because we don't know how long it'll take. Remember Y2K? In the year 2000, I remember seeing people's accounts not get back up to where it was before until almost 2015. Guys, it took about 15 years for people to get back to zero. But guess what? They weren't back to zero, were they? Because in those 15 years, do you think there was no inflation? Of course there was, right? Inflation just about doubled over that period of time. So what it really means is it took them really closer to about 2020, just pre the big 2020 spike there, before you finally said, now I got back to where I was in the year 2000 when it came to buying power. Guys, if you're in your 50s, and I'm even gonna say this for your 60s, do not gamble with your money. Don't put all your money. If you're gonna have enough 401ks or IRAs, and if you're gonna keep with a financial advisor that's paid whether you make money or not, if you're gonna put your money in the stock market like that, just be more conservative with it. Lock it in. Even if your advisor says, be aggressive, like that guy did, who, by the way, that guy should probably lose his license for saying that to someone who's in their 70s. Don't do it. Don't buy into that crap, okay? Same thing with your 60s. Don't gamble with your money. Invest for cash flow. Start focusing on this. This is where you really want it. You don't care about how big your account is. You care about, does it really actually pay you income? That should be important to you. By the way, in your retirement account, you should only be pulling off 3% a year. And if you're younger, if you're trying to retire early, it should only be more like 2% a year. So if you're pulling out 3% a year, you want $100,000 a year lifestyle, you got to get your account built up to $3.33 million to then live on your $99,000+ a year. And if you want to do that after taxes, you might have to get up to closer to $4 million. So then you can pay taxes and still have $100,000 a year lifestyle. So you better get working, right? In your 70s, same thing. Don't gamble your money and just try not to die. I'm just kidding. I'm not saying that. You're not, obviously you're still really young. You've got plenty of life ahead of you, but you may want to look at other additional income sources. So obviously you've been looking at Social Security, I'm sure, but do you have a paid off house? And this is a situation with my dad. He's in his late 70s. He started saying, Chris, should I look into a reverse mortgage? And I said, if you want to keep your house, yeah, that's a great option. If you have a paid off house, even if it's not paid off, if you've got more than 50% equity, you can actually have the bank pay you streams of income to your house where you don't pay a dime. So even if you have a mortgage right now, but maybe you have lots of equity, you could do a reverse mortgage. They'll essentially take that loan over and then keep paying you monthly while your mortgage payment goes down to zero. So you not only just pay no mortgage payment, but you also get paid income from it. And then down the road, when you pass away, either your heirs can take it over and assume that mortgage, or they can just let the bank take it and the house is the bank's and they deal with it. So there's lots of different options you could do there. So look at additional income sources. Overall, for all of you though, I would definitely look at creating more passive income in the alternative investment space. Things that are Main Street, not Wall Street. For example, I had a guy named Dan who from California, just retired from the military. He said, Chris, I've got $1 million that I got saved up on my plan, but my financial advisor says I can only pull out 3%, which is $30,000 a year. Chris, I cannot live on $30,000 a year before taxes. He's like, that's more like $2,000 a month after taxes, if that. I can't do that, Chris. I live in California. I said, you're right. You should do something better. So we started looking at different investments. He was looking at like apartment syndications or investments where you pool your money with other people and go in as partners and buy an apartment complex. He was looking at rentals, looking at oil and gas type of investments where he's able to make money there. And guess what? He just updated us on our podcast, on the Money Ripples podcast, said that he had now netted $11,000 a month. That's over $130,000 a year, $100,000 a year more than what he was making or supposed to be pulling out in his traditional retirement plan that his financial advisor said he should keep doing. Guys, that's the difference. Now, if you want to go a step beyond this and not just passive income, but never run out of money in retirement, check out this next video right here.